Jack's Night In.
Today, joining me on Jack's Night In is comedian, I'd say comedian, magician and escapologist. It's Danny Hunt. Hello, Danny.
Hey, Jack, how are you? Comedian? I don't know about that.
I think you're a funny guy.
Yeah, but I'm not meant to be, Jack. That's the problem.
All right. I was just laughing when you were escaping from them boxes.
Oh, dear. Sorry, I touched the screen then. I shouldn't.
It's all right. If you want to get intimate, Danny, we can do that afterwards.
No, I saw a little mark on the screen. I thought, oh, I'll clean that up, and then realised you will see me doing that.
So, Danny, how did you get? Like, first of all, you're someone that's seen Harry Houdini, legend Harry Houdini. You've seen him 10 foot, thousands of foot above a building, upside down in a straitjacket. Who, in their right mind, looks at that and goes, "I want to do that."
Good question, that, Jack. Very good question. I mean, to be honest, let's just get this right as well. You're saying I've seen him. I'm not that old that I saw him live. We've got to get that straight. I you know what? As a kid, I watched the 1953 film with Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. As a kid, I loved it. And watching Tony Curtis hanging from a building, wriggling out of a straitjacket, as a kid, I loved it. And I used to get my sister to tie my jumper, hands behind my back and everything, and I'd have to try and wriggle out of it, and it was just crazy, man. So that, I think, I remember seeing, I looked at a photograph of Houdini. It was a poster of Houdini, and wanted to know more about the guy. And I'd say at the time I was about 9 years old, something like that when I saw this, and he was just fascinating. So it was the whole Houdini bit that really got me into doing escapes, and then the more I read about this fascinating guy, the more I wanted to do, and then the older I got, the more I started doing, whether it was hanging upside down, wriggling out of straitjackets, or thrown into tanks of water, or pools or rivers, handcuffed and shackled, and of course recreating a lot of Houdini's escapes, including prison escapes. Very fortunate that I've had the chance to break out of 4 different prisons in the UK and try and recreate the way that Houdini would have done them.
Yeah, you escaped from Dick Turpin's cell. Was one of them.
I did, yeah, in York. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think, this is another thing. If I remember right, I came and did a video. We showed a video at Hull.
Yes.
Hull Young Magicians with the escapes, and we did a talk for you guys. I've got a photograph of you somewhere in a straitjacket, I think, on that day.
But it wasn't really that. It was like a sax straitjacket. And you tried to teach us how to escape from a straitjacket.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I've seen you do it loads of times. I thought, it's not that. Danny just does that. He's out. And I don't know. First of all, I was in it for a couple of minutes, and it gets terrifying. After
you look hot.
Yeah, you get hot. You get terrified. What makes you want to get in a straitjacket? I still don't get it. Like, because you're a talented magician and performer, and you're
Well,
very
thank you.
good at that, and you get money from that. Well, you did get money from that. You get money from doing that. Why get in a box?
Do you know, Jack? I think I can only describe it as, obviously the magic is it feels a separate sort of thing, and when you do the magic, it's a wonderful feeling when you go on stage and, you know, I put my partner Steph in a box and she vanishes, or we make a levitate, and I love doing all of that, and I love magic with all my heart, absolutely love magic. But when you do an escape, it's just a different sort of feeling. It's like a different feeling of adrenaline, if that makes sense. There's an excitement of, what if I can't get out? What if I get stuck here right now? What if something goes wrong? I guess I suppose it's a little bit like, especially with the dangerous escapes, maybe it's a little bit like that adrenaline, you know, someone like a skydiver might get, or a racing car driver, that rush of adrenaline when you're doing the escapes, that you just end up wanting more. And I say this to other magicians as well. If you've ever done a dangerous escape, or a prison escape, or an aerial straitjacket escape, you'll never want to do a normal magic trick again, because that escape is just gives you such a rush. It's awesome.
And like when you've done, because I've seen you do underwater escapes where your head, your full body sometimes is underwater upside down. What is going through your mind while you're in that water trying to find the pick?
I think, do you know what I think you've got to do? I think you've got to be quite focused with it. I think there's that you've really got to be focused. So I must admit, if I think back to when I was, if I'm climbing into a tank of water, the first thing that I think about, the first thing that goes through my mind as soon as I get in that tank of water, is the cold. You notice how cold it is. And it doesn't take long to acclimatise to it. I spend a lot of time getting used to cold water. I always remember a stage manager at a venue going to me, "I must be mad for filling the tank full of cold water." And I said to him, "Where are we going to get that much hot water to fill this huge telephone box sized tank?" And he said, like you said, I had quite a good point, really. But all of my rehearsals for that were always done outside, so I'm kind of used to the cold. But the cold can be quite a big deal. You've got to kind of get used to that, and I think that's the thing that you notice, and that's the thing you mind.
Would hot water change it though? Because,
do you know what, I did an escape a couple of years ago. It was at the Southport Theatre, and the stage manager said to me he had a hot water supply, and it was a 55-gallon drum. I don't know even if you were there then. It was a 55-gallon drum, and it was at a magic convention. So I climbed inside of the drum, and the lid's placed on. We filled this tank full of hot water, and I just felt all hot and prickly, and it didn't help at all. It wasn't a good feeling. I think I prefer the cold water to the hot, in fairness. But
otherwise, every time you get in a hot tub, you try and escape, wouldn't you?
Exactly. It's like that when I get in the bath on the night. So.
Do you have a favourite type of escape then? Is there one escape that you've done, or is there something that you haven't done that you'd like to do?
There's loads of things. I'm constantly trying to come up with ideas. I think some of the stuff that we've recreated, or myself and Steph have recreated, that Houdini had once performed. I really enjoy looking back through history and finding stuff that he'd done. So things like the water torture cell, which is lowered into the tank of water head first and making your escape. And I came up with a different version of that. So like you said earlier, it's just my head inside of the tank. There's no covers go around. You see me upside down in the tank, wriggling to make my escape as the tank fills with water. So I think doing stuff like that really kind of excites me, and I really enjoy doing. My head trap, inspired by a very famous horror movie. And I think if you see the head trap, you'll know which horror movie it was inspired by. But I get chained up again, handcuffed to this table with spikes above my head that are going to come crashing in if I don't get out within the time allocated. So I think things like that, anything that, and Steph, my partner, she always thinks that I'm crazy, especially with things like the head trap or the death tank. I might just push it a little bit more than I should do and hold on, just so I get that reaction from the audience.
Which is like Are we going to do the death trap or the death tank tonight? Am I going to get killed or get killed tonight? Which one am I?
Which one? Yeah, yeah. It wouldn't be quite as fun, would it, if it was the head tank of fun, or the head tank of, it's got to sound death defying. Yeah. So.
It's to see when you're on the fluffy couch tank. That's what you start.
Thank you. That's it. This is it. This is where we start the escape from. Yeah, on the fluffy couch. So.
But you're right about that excitement, because I've seen the head one with the spikes, and
yeah,
to the point where you're coming out of it, and I've seen it a couple of times, that one, and I don't know if it just looks like it, but it feels like this from the audience point of view, that you were about that far away from getting that.
Yeah.
In your ears.
So about 2 years ago, we were performing it. We performed it quite close up. I've got to say as well about that escape. I first created it because we were heading off to America to perform at an escape artist convention, and I wanted to do something a little different. So I created that escape for them, and I performed it in the States. And when I came back home, I decided I was never going to do it again. It terrified me that much, and then I thought, no, actually, it wasn't being terrified. It was just a different feeling of adrenaline again. So I thought, let's do it again, and we kept doing it. But about 2 years ago, myself and Steph were performing. Like I say, the audience were quite close to us in this venue where we were performing. And I hung on a tiny little bit longer than I should have done, perhaps. And I caught the side of my face, just caught the side of my face, only ever so slightly. But it was enough to bleed. And I remember jumping forward thinking, actually, I didn't feel the cut at first. But I remember landing on the floor, as I jumped forward from the spikes, landing on the floor, and Steph coming over to see if I was okay, and Steph saying to me, "Oh my God, you're bleeding." And I remember looking at the audience and hearing people go, "Oh, he's bleeding." And it was great. It was a great reaction. I got such a beating from Steph. Steph hated the fact I did that, and it was. I think it's possibly Steph's least favourite.
Yeah.
Least favourite game.
I can imagine why.
But again, that reaction and that adrenaline, it was just amazing. So.
Yeah, because you can't get that from a magic trick, can you? You can't get, oh, she's appeared from the box and peed out of the box.
No, true. I mean, don't get me wrong. You might get the odd paper cut, but yeah, it could be a little nasty. You'll remember, I think many years ago, with in fact, you were definitely there. An illusion that I used to perform, which was dividing the girl into two pieces, but a modern version of it, where a top part of her head would go around a track and upside down. And my assistant at the time, she got her hand jammed in the mechanism, and if you remember, she was rushed to hospital. So I was safe on that night, but yeah,
never taking a bow at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's what you do. People think illusionists and illusions are quite safe, but there is measures in place. Obviously, there's measures in place for you, but it's not. They can still go wrong.
Yeah, I I'll go back many years ago when I kind of first started venturing into the escapology shows and everything. I was doing magic and escapology together. And as I say, I still love doing illusions and magic. Magic and illusion shows are my favourite things. I genuinely love doing them all the time. But a friend of ours, in fact, a chap you also will remember very well, Ali Bongo. Ali came and he saw one of the shows, and he said to me afterwards, he said, why are you doing escapes with magic? He said, it cheapens your escapes. He said, it's almost like you need to keep them separate. So it's almost like do escapes because people believe that what they're seeing then is real. It's not an illusion. It's not a magic trick. And of course, there are magicians that combine magic escapes, as Ali would call them, magic escapes with the magic and illusion. And then, of course, we've always tried ever since that conversation with Ali to keep all of the escapes separate from the magic. Which is quite difficult. You get some people sometimes that know that we are magicians going, well, was it a magic trick? But no, I really was stuck inside of a tank of water for 3 minutes holding my breath.
Well, there's something in that as well, because to do a full show with escapes and to even make an escape interesting to an audience is that that's quite difficult to do, to make something entertaining, because they're going to escape from that, but that's going to take
Massively.
minutes. How interesting is that going to be? But you
Yeah.
still managed to do that.
And I think as well, when you go back to the days of Houdini, when Houdini would be challenged by an audience member to escape from a set of handcuffs, or like he was in 1904, he was challenged to escape from a set of handcuffs by the Mirror newspaper, the Daily Illustrated Mirror, as it was known back then. And Houdini would be handcuffed. He'd then go inside of the cabinet and he'd start to make his escape. So the audience would stand or sit when Houdini performed the challenge escape from the Mirror handcuff. This all took place in front of 4,000 people at the London Hippodrome, and 4,000 people for an hour and a half sat and watched a cabinet on the stage, and nothing else happening, just the band playing. He did try and build the suspense, or he did build the suspense, that he'd be in the cabinet for a little while, then all of a sudden a curtain went to one side, and he'd step forward, and Houdini was actually still inside of the handcuffs. So of course the audience at this point thought he'd failed. So he'd go back inside of the cabinet, and 20 minutes later the curtain would go to one side and Houdini would step back out, and he'd be kneeling. He'd complain because his knees were hurting, and need something to kneel on in the cabinet. So the theatre manager got him a cushion. And of course the audience are getting more and more tense with every second that's going on. And then I think the third and final time he came out of the cabinet, he was still bound in the handcuffs, but he said that if he could remove his jacket, because it was very hot in there, then he would go back in and continue with the escape. But of course, in order to remove his jacket, they'd have to take off the handcuffs. So he was declined the chance to remove the handcuffs to take off his jacket. Houdini wasn't happy about that. And of course, he built up the suspense even more by removing a pocket knife from his top pocket, holding it in his teeth. His hands are still bound, and he kind of hacked away at his jacket with the pocket knife in his teeth, building up all the suspense. The audience went wild. The members of the public ripped the jacket off Houdini. He went back into the cabinet, and an hour and 10 minutes later, he'd escaped. But still, even with those moments, those moments which were brilliant, and what an absolutely, what a master of showmanship. I don't think a modern audience would want to watch a cabinet for an hour and 10 minutes these days. So I think eliminate the cabinet, and people can see what's going on in there. So once upon a time, when you saw the water torture cell, you saw the cabinet covered. Now with our death tank, then you see me inside of the tank, upside down, with my head in this box, picking the locks and trying to make my escape. Got to be about making it interesting. And again, going back to it when we did the prison escapes at York Castle, and Ripon and Newcastle Keep, we tried to make it more interesting, so people weren't just stood outside of the castle or outside of the prison waiting for me to come out. We locked a TV crew inside of there with me, and they filmed it, and a few interesting things went along the way. And I'd handcuff a policeman inside of there who was standing guard, and just anything we could do just to make it a little more interesting and entertaining for our crowds.
And do you think there seems to, because when Houdini did it, I guess there was quite a lot of secrecy in how he escaped, but now it seems to be more, it's like you're quite open with how it's done and where you're getting the keys from and stuff, to some escapes. Some kind of want to keep secret, but the people know that there's a way you're getting out. Do you think it's good that that element has changed a bit?
I think it is. I mean, obviously we don't want the world, we don't want criminals rushing around breaking into prisons and or breaking out of prisons or anything. So, for instance, on one of my escapes, as much as we have the camera crews there filming the prison escape, I would still cover the lock whilst I was picking it, so I didn't want everyone to see either exactly what the tool was I was using, or exactly how the locking mechanism would work.
Buy them on your website, Prison Escape.
Buy them on the website, you've got it. But there's also things like, I don't know, just things like Houdini. The legend of Houdini, of course, was that he was, I think he almost came across very much like a superhero, almost like he had these incredible powers. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle believing he could, dematerialize and walk through walls. People suspecting he had pockets sewn into his skin where he would hide tools, and that he could regurgitate some of the tools he would swallow. So again, if you see some of our shows, then you'll watch me regurgitate a piece of steel, and I'll use that piece of steel to pick a lock. As a kid, not just escapes, but all sorts of things fascinated me, and watching sideshow performers at fairs when I was a child, and then wanting to learn how to swallow swords and how to regurgitate things, all became tools and things that would help me along in the future, I guess, as they did with Houdini. He spent a long time in the circus, so he picked up on lots of the skills from the circus performance as well.
It must be strange for you knowing that kid's having that dream to getting into all these sideshows things and getting into magic and escaping, but now it's your job.
Yeah, do you know what? There's nothing better. It's that old saying, isn't it? If you got a job that you enjoy doing, you'll never work another day in your life. Well, having said that, at the minute, none of us are working, but it's nice. It's nice to go out and do something. I really do absolutely enjoy and love every second of what I do. There's days when you kind of go, oh, I've got to climb in that tank of water again, and you've got to kind of snap out of that. You've got to snap out of that sort of feel, because you can't let your concentration slip. You've got to kind of still concentrate on making sure it's presented, and you're doing as much as you can to be a showman. But at the same time, and above all else, think about danger and being safe at the end of it.
Is there anything you've ever said no to? Like if someone said, "Can you do this? Can you escape?"
Are we talking escape still?
Yeah.
Okay, just no. Do you know what? I'm very proud to say all of the challenges that I've been placed before me, I've accepted. So when I get myself into trouble and someone sends a challenge in, some of the challenges have been great. We've had obviously the challenges to escape from the prisons, which have been great. The straitjacket escape. A gentleman came to me with the jacket that you had on. So going back quite a few years now, and this jacket had no sleeves. You had your hands down by your side, and the deal was if I got out, I could keep the jacket. So I got out, and that's why we have the jacket now, and you got to wear it. So little challenges like that are great. Also, the challenges that come in from police are usually really good. We were working for, it was a police force in Wales. I don't know if it could have been South Wales Police or Swansea Police, something like that. But the challenge was to escape from a set of their handcuffs. And we kept the challenge right till the end of the night. And fortunately for me, the handcuffs were just a regular set of police handcuffs, and the officer put them on, and the deal was that if I got out of them, I could keep the handcuffs, and he would donate £500 to charity, which was awesome, because I got out of them, and of course if I didn't get out of them, then I would have to donate the £500. So as it goes, he donated the money, and everyone had a great night of it. It again built up that drama and that suspense, and all of his friends thought it was brilliant that he'd effectively challenged me and he'd lost £500. But
he's gone into a rail prison, like, because if someone said, right, let's put you in a rail prison with rail prisoners, and you've got 1 week to escape, including having all the armed guards. And do you think? I think you could. Do you think you'd be able to find?
Do you know what? I think the biggest problem I've got here, Jack, is my boyish good looks and me in a real prison. So I think that would be an issue for me. No, I think. Do you know what? Houdini always used to say, "Never get into something if you can't get out of it." And that's great advice. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to spend a little time looking at a working prison. I think it'd be awesome to have a go at it. But something tells me I don't think the government would let me do that right now or any time.
It's a brilliant TV series, that, like a full.
Watching me in prison?
Just not in the showers.
No, exactly.
You're doing a really good. You're being challenged by Boris Johnson at the minute to stay in your house. You're doing really well during that, aren't you?
So far, so good. I'm out of razors, which is an issue, but I'm sticking tight and not going anywhere. So yeah, we shall see. And fingers crossed, it's not going to last. Well, let's not jinx anything, but hopefully we'll get through it as quickly and safely as we all possibly can.
And when you are back touring and stuff, you tour your own theatre shows as well as one of the people you toured with a lot was Sir Ken Dodd, who sadly no longer with us. But Ken was a big supporter of you, wasn't he?
Ken was, and do you know what, Jack? I miss him every single day. I worked with him for just over 10 years, and I'd known him for a lot longer. And in all the time that we toured with him, did you ever come and see one of the shows with Ken at all? Did you ever see it? No. He was just an amazing man. He would come every night, and he would give you some advice. He would ask if you would like the advice. And of course, you've got to look at it like this. 55 years in show business is what he used to say he'd been doing it for. I think it was a little longer if we're being official on age and so on. But 55 years in show business, what an absolute, a mind full of knowledge. And he did nothing but encourage myself and Steph. And he'd stand in the wings and you'd see him, but whilst you were performing, you'd see him come to the edge of the wings and scribble some notes down on a piece of paper. And when I came off, they'd be there for me and sit in his dressing room with him. And do you know what? Loved magic, loved magicians. And we got to spend, very pleased to say, for a little while, myself and Steph lived in Liverpool for about 5 years. We lived about 2 minutes away from where Ken lives. Well, yeah, just over 2 minutes away from where Ken lives. So we'd call in and see him, and he was just a brilliant man. He was a mentor. He was a friend, and just miss him dearly.
It's such a great thing that you got to work with someone like that.
Oh yeah, massive. You know, he was one of my heroes. One of the first, in fact, the first magician I ever saw live, I saw at the Futurist in Scarborough when I was about 8 years old. And he was at the Futurist in Scarborough, and my mum and dad took me and my sister off to watch the Ken Dodd Happiness Show. And he had a special guest magician. And that guest magician came on stage, and he produced doves and chickens and owls, and he filled the stage in poultry. And I was just amazed by it. It was a guy called Paul Derrick, who was the international birdman.
I think he lives around the corner from me.
I could say he lives in Hull, doesn't he? He lives in Hull.
It's literally about 5 minutes away from my house.
Yeah, and the last time I saw him was at I think it was at a friend's funeral. It was at one of the drummers from the Ken Dodd Show's funeral. And do you know what? I don't know if he knows that I was the first magician he ever saw, but I just loved it. And I wrote to Ken when I was 9 or 10, maybe it was a little older, with a photograph that I'd had taken in the local newspaper. And I asked if he would needed any magicians, could he get in touch with me? And I mentioned this to Ken years and years later, obviously when I was working with him. And a couple of months went by, and I didn't think any more of it. Obviously, I told him about it. And I got a call from him one day. He said, if you're passing the house, call in. And I called in, and he found the little cutting with me that I'd sent him, the newspaper cutting that I'd sent him of me and my sister doing the Zigzag Girl. And yeah, it was wonderful. It was brilliant. So, and like I say, just an opportunity to work with one of the great masters, if not the master of comedy. Just a massive supporter of magicians and entertainment in full stop, Jack. You know, I mean, always had a couple of support acts, a couple of special guests in the show. We'd have a multi-instrumentalists or ventriloquists and singers and comedians. Just constantly would support and encourage those acts along. And like I said, I'm very, very fortunate to become more than just a guy that I worked with.
Yeah,
he became a friend, and like I said, just the most incredible man I've ever known, I think.
That's brilliant. Is there anyone else you've worked with? Probably not on the same level as Ken, but someone that you have idolised, or someone famous that you never thought you'd get to work with in this capacity?
Do you know what? When I kind of first started out, I had the chance. I toured with Freddie Starr. I wasn't very old. I'm going back to 19. It's going to make me feel real old when I say this now, Jack. I think 1998. I think, and I toured with Freddie Starr. And Freddie was, again, at the time, I always remember watching Wayne Dobson performing with Freddie and so on. So it was a big deal. And, you know, he was as mad as a box of frogs, just completely insane and super nice and really sweet to me. But part way through this season, I was working with Freddie. He had a car accident and he had to stop working and couldn't work the season. And we got a young comedian who was just kind of appearing on TV at the time to come along and finish off the tour. And that was Bradley Walsh.
Oh, wow.
And Bradley was just brilliant. I loved every second of working with Bradley and would love to work with him again. He's just absolutely incredible. So, yeah, I think Bradley was, just, again, a super guy to work with. So
With Freddie Starr, I don't know if it was you that told me, it might have been someone else, but was it, I'm sure it was you, Freddie Starr did a Lincoln Rings routine with, like, barbed wire.
Yeah, I think it was me that told you this story. Keep going, keep telling it.
And, no, I'll let you tell the story.
So have we got magicians listening?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so Freddie would do this routine with the barbed wire linking rings. And I was in his dressing room right before he started, along with his tour manager, who's a super guy called Bill Pridden. And I'm assuming we're on the same story. If we're not, I'm going to tell you something completely different. And part of the routine, it looks like the barbed wire is caught on Freddie's jacket, and he's obviously got a little magnet in his pocket. And this one routine, he dropped the magnet in his trousers. This one night, sorry, he dropped his magnet in his trouser pocket, and he'd keep another magnet in his jacket pocket. And he dropped them both into his trouser pockets, and the two magnets just went and cracked together, catching Freddie rather uncomfortably, as myself and Bill then had to prise these two magnets from off of Freddie. So I don't know if that's the same story or not, Jack, but yeah. It was quite an interesting evening.
So you've escaped from prison, you've escaped from Freddie Starr's bollocks.
Yeah.
You've done it all. What is there something now when you get back to it all that you think, especially now that you've been put in this halt and pause and you got a chance to think a bit more about stuff, is there something that you've never done that you want to put time into now, maybe?
Yeah, do you know what there is? There is, Jack. There's an escape that so many years ago I read about this escape, and then in a book that you might have as well, by Professor Eddie Dawes, all about the history of magic, and a gentleman called Arthur Seprington, also from Hull, of course, both from Hull. There's a photograph in there of an escapologist called Carl Bartoni, and I hadn't never met Carl up until November last year, and we went to an event, Charlie Caroli event, a book launch all about the famous clown from the Blackpool Tower, Charlie Caroli, and I got to meet Carl Bartoni at this event, and I got chatting to him. But this photograph that's in this book fascinated me as a child, and it's the photograph of Carl sat in a circus ring with tigers and lions sat around him, while he is chained in this straitjacket, and he had to get out of the straitjacket while the tigers and the big cats sat there and watched him making his escape. And I always thought, wow, that would be incredible to do. Maybe not the most practical thing to do, but I'd certainly like to chat to Carl a little bit more about it and see what his feelings were while he was performing this escape.
With the success of Netflix's Tiger King, I'm sure you could probably do it dressed as Joe Exotic and have
Do you think that's? I think I could pull that look off, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just a bit of blonde streak and you've got it.
That's sorted. Yeah, yeah. So it could be that. It could be the new escape. Could be the new escape from Joe Exotic's tiger enclosure. Maybe. You
You've
never
done
know.
stuff with animals before, haven't you? Magic stuff, obviously, all above board.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do you know what? I again, always fascinated by animals. Of course, it's very difficult. You've got to, number one, you've got to look after the animals, massively look after the animals, and I think magicians of all, with increasing, the changing times and how people perceive animals to be looked after in magic. I think a lot of people think you've taken a rabbit and genuinely squashing this thing in a top hat or so on. And we're very fortunate that we work with a guy who, if you see animals on TV, he's trained the animals, he looks after those animals for TV. He also rescues animals and big cats and things as well. So we had the chance to work with him on some TV shows and a couple of live performances as well. And it was really nice to see the work that he's doing, because he was, like I say, rescuing animals, rescuing big cats and releasing them back into the wild and nursing them back to health. So it was amazing to see that and play a teeny tiny little part in the way that we can look after those animals and move forward again. And yeah, it's good fun. It's nice to see that. Nice to see animals being looked after.
You mentioned TV. Yeah, well, yeah, animals must be, because we've all heard the stories from certain magicians that don't treat their animals.
Treat them right. Yeah.
It's awful, really, especially when they are the act, essentially. Like,
yeah,
the act wouldn't be getting the work that it was if it wasn't for these animals, would it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think obviously there's not very many circuses performing with animals anymore, and the circuses then they've moved with the times and they've found that they can still attract people to the circus without having the animals there, which is wonderful that the circuses can then still keep performing. And I think that's brilliant that those circuses still keep pushing forward with the death-defying spectacular then, which is great to see. Really good to see.
And you mentioned sideshows as well as a thing that you fond of as kids. I've seen one of the things you've built, which was a flea circus. When you're creating stuff like, is there anything else you've done with the sideshow stuff that you've?
Do you know what, Jack? I've got all sorts of bits and bobs, and as we've both got a mutual friend who's without a doubt the king of sideshow in the UK. I think he's awesome, and if you ever get the chance to see his flea circus, it's something I was very proud to make for him as a birthday present. Made it for a birthday present for him, and I love all that sort of thing, the sideshow stuff. We've built, myself and Steph, we get the chance to work with lots of interesting people on interesting projects. So, for our show ourselves, whether it's knife throwing boards or beds of nails and things like that, because I think that's something which also fascinates people as well. And then, of course, we've got things like the flea circuses, which, again, another friend of ours used to keep actual fleas for a little while, if you remember. So, which is also something that fascinates me, although I definitely don't have fleas. Just to get that right. There we go. Yeah. So, but yeah.
On the rug at the back, it's fine.
No, we're good.
And you've done a lot of work with TV companies and TV shows in creating magic. Then that's again, you man of many talents. With all of these things, very different skills apply. You'd be happy if you just focused on one of these things and have a brilliant career with it. But you've gone, I'll do 20. So
yeah, I don't know how that happened, really, Jack. It kind of like the TV stuff just happened, and it wasn't something that I ever intended following up or doing. But I did one TV spot years ago with Stephen Mulhern, and I got into that because another friend of mine came to me saying that he didn't have time to help him out, and he knew that I might be able to. That was Richard Cadell with Sooty, and of course Richard used to do big Grand Illusions, or still actually getting back into doing some illusions now. So I took over Richard's illusion show with his vanishing motorbike and things like that. And Richard kind of sent Stephen my way, so I helped Stephen out for a TV show and then another show at Alton Towers. And then all of a sudden, other people kept coming to me wanting me to do stuff. So I ended up working on, as I said, stuff with Stephen. Ended up doing things for a TV show for ITV called Houdini and Doyle, which came out a couple of years ago. And then went off and did a load of stuff with Objective TV, who make all of the stuff with people like Barry and Stewart, which was great working with those two guys. Of course, all of the stuff, Help My Supply Teacher is Magic, and Help My Supply Teacher is Still Magic, and Help My School Trip is Magic, all produced and put together by Anthony Owen, who was a great TV magician. What he didn't know about magic on TV obviously wasn't worth knowing. So Anthony would put these shows together. So I ended up doing a load of stuff with him, and then working on BBC One's Sherlock, which was, I think, possibly one of my favourite things to do, working on Sherlock with Benedict and Martin Freeman. Again, two incredible people to watch present their art, of course, of acting. It's just stunning to watch. But,
and that episode you worked on Sherlock is, I'd probably say, one of the most iconic ones. That's one people talk about quite a lot. And
yeah,
he was a part of it in quite a big way. It's quite a big scene in one of the. You have one of the props from the show as well, don't you?
I do. So yeah, so if you go, I've got lots of props actually from the shows, Jack. I ended up starting to everything. Every time I did something, I always wanted to keep a little souvenir, so I ended up keeping stuff. And one of the props in Sherlock, it's a board that this actor was chained to, and he had to escape from the board before a ballista shot an arrow across the stage and into the board that he would be attached to. And it was all set up on a timer with sand falling down and everything. And I built this prop with the props department, and we used this prop in the show, and I supplied them with all of the stuff and done and dusted. And I just turned to the producers and said, I think this is a wonderful prop. And he also, at the time, he was working on Doctor Who. And him and the other producer, they used to keep all of the props, and they used to stash all of the props in their house. So their house was full of props from Doctor Who and from Sherlock. And I never thought anything more about it other than that I said I really like it. It's one of my favourite props I've done. And then about 2 months after filming, a truck pulled up outside of my house with a delivery, and I'm like, what's this? And there it was. The guys from Sherlock had sent me the props that we'd made for the show and everything. So I got to keep those. So I proudly stood in my front room for a very long time, which was quite cool to have. So.
It's so good, everything you've done, and I don't think there's anything that, I think if you look back, there's nothing you could say you've missed out on, or because you've just done it all, haven't you?
I think
that like at the end of your career, but you're not. You've got.
I hope not, Jack. I'm hoping this isn't the end of it. Do you know what? I just love doing what I do, Jack, and I think everyone should, try if you can to just go and enjoy, make the most of what you've got to do, especially now, especially with, the world as it is. I think it's just a really good thing to, concentrate on what you would like to do, and that's what we've been doing during this lockdown. We've been concentrating on concentrating on what's going to happen when it's all over. When the lockdown is all over. It'd be nice to use our time productively and come up with something that that hopefully during this time is going to be nice. That when we can get back on a stage and present it, it'll be good to do again. So, yeah.
I think that's a lovely way to end the interview, Danny. Thank you so much for joining me.